Hello, I am Pedro and I practice permaculture. Today, I'm going to teach you how to create a polyculture system. That is, a small ecosystem where we're going to integrate a number of plant species, letting them work together for their own benefit, and ultimately producing a yield that is going to improve the actual system, that is the soil and other species, and is also going to nurture us. Basically, what we're going to do today is building a small garden bed, about 3 by 8 feet, which we're going to sow. Actually, we're going to overseed with a variety of different seeds to populate that soil surface. As the seeds begin to germinate, we're going to start harvesting microgreens, opening up space for the seedlings to develop, and we will continue to harvest as we go along. For the sake of video length and convenience, we're going to break this project into 3 videos. The first one, this one, is going to be about planning and site selection. These are the important considerations. This is where we get to think about how we're going to tackle this. The second one is going to be materials that you will need and soil. And those are 2 important topics, especially the soil one, because we want to start from a healthy soil. The third one is going to be assembling and care for the system. At that point, we'll implement it. I'm going to follow up with a series of other video updates where we can hopefully communicate and exchange ideas, and I'll show you how my system is doing, and hopefully we can talk to each other and deal with issues that we may have, and do this collaborative effort. Selecting your garden site is the step where the most thinking, observing, and planning goes. Ideally, you will like a space that has about 6 to 8 hours of direct sun exposure every day. That doesn't mean that if you don't get 6 to 8 hours of direct sun exposure, you're not going to be able to garden there. Rather, think in terms of what you would like to grow. For example, fruit and vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers or so, they really like direct sunlight, and so they'll benefit from having 6 to 8 hours of direct sun every day. That doesn't mean they won't grow in areas that are partially shade, but you won't get those big fruits. Conversely, leafy greens of any sort, they do better in partial shade. What we're trying to do, however, is by combining all these different species, we're going to provide, say, the shade that the lettuces need, even if they are if they're in a place where they receive direct sunlight for more than 6 or 8 hours a day. If you plan to extend your growing season, that is, if you would like to start earlier in the spring or even grow later in the fall, you will need the ability to create a microclimate. In that case, you should consider, say for those of us in the northern hemisphere, to set up your garden beds against a south-facing wall that will reflect more sunlight as the season begins to cool down or still cool, and therefore you can increase the heat in the area where you're gardening. We are expanding our kitchen garden to include an area where we can extend the season. And we happen to have a south-facing area right out of one end of our house, and that is where we are building our beds. Because we're growing food intensively, we want the ability to check in the garden several times during the day. Therefore, you want to set up your beds as close as possible to the house. You will also need clean water, as you will be watering your plants frequently. And finally, you need to consider the external pressures that your garden is going to be affected by. For example, wind is one of those things that we have to take into account. If you have prevailing winds or strong winds coming in a certain direction, you need to think about that. And then think about ways you can alleviate the stress that the wind can put upon your garden. In our case, Wind is not much of an issue where we are, but we have a dog that might be an issue, and she's a loving dog, caring dog, but she likes to dig, and so we're gonna have to do some kind of fencing around our garden beds just to keep the dog out of reach. Having a small fencing is a good idea also because it will prevent other creatures from getting into your garden. I'm talking about rabbits or groundhogs or some of those things. So it's nice to be able to protect your garden. So now I will ask you to take a little time to think about what is it that you would like to do, how would you like to set it up, and more importantly to start to think about the correct place for you to do this. Observing, go outside, check out the landscape, check out the sun. There's all sort of apps that you can use to look into sun trajectory during different times of the day, but look into those trees and buildings and structures that will create shade. Look into some of the potential problems that you can have, and chart it out and think about, consider pros and cons of having your garden beds in different places. As I say, this is the time that requires the most thinking, but is time and effort that is well spent, because it will pay off. So this is the end of our first part. I hope you accept the challenge and you continue, and if so, we'll see you soon in part 2. Thank you for watching.